Hey, welcome back to the channel. Got a little something on the bench for you here. So this is going to be a tutorial how to ELRS. This Express ELRS has tripped up a lot of people. And I think why is because there's a step-by-step process that you need to follow. If you don't follow the step-by-step process, I believe it's kind of throwing a wrench into the plan. It's just not going to work out very well. It's going to be very frustrating. We're going to go through ExpressLRS. I've got some receivers. I got my radio. I've got my module on the back here. We're going to go into a model. We're going to bind up. We're going to jump over the computer. We're going to look at the configurator, some folders, some download. We're going to kind of go through everything in this video. But keep in mind, it's a step-by-step process. If you don't follow the steps, you're probably not going to enjoy it too well. But I assure you that after you do it one time, I'm telling you, it's really easy. It's a great system to use. I'm going to use the Wi-Fi setup. I think it's the best. It's quick and easy. I can literally go through all my receivers in like less than 2 minutes. I mean, it takes me longer to remove my props, plug a battery in, wait for the 60-second cycle than it does to actually update the quadcopter. I mean, it's really, really a good system. I'm going to go through a little bit of wiring to begin with, because I believe that a lot of people don't understand what a UART is. I'm not going to go into a long tutorial about what a UART is and how it works, but I want to make sure that you understand in wiring why you're doing what you're doing. And I think there's some mistakes on it. When you Google a wiring diagram, I think there's some mistakes that are being made because of the way they displayed that information. I think it's frustrating for a new person not understanding what that means. So I'm just going to go through that real quick. But yeah, we got configurator, we got folders, we got download. It's quite a bit of information. ExpressLRS for a beginner is not something you can just rush through, or you're just going to end up lost and frustrated. So that's what this video is about. So stay tuned. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go through these two receivers. These two receivers are very, very similar. There's not a whole lot of difference between them, but you need to understand when you're wiring, there is some differences. I've seen some of these receivers, now we're talking about the UFL connector facing up. That's the orientation that I have these placed in. There's some receivers where these pads are different. So UFL connector straight down on this RP1 from Radio Master is the RX. On the Happy model EP1, the straight down is ground. You can find out if you're not sure and you have just the receiver. Let's say you got a receiver for somebody or secondhand or whatever the case may be. You can take your multimeter and continuity check the barrel of the the UFL, and straight down is ground. You can test your lead and find out which pad is ground, and then you know it's going to be ground 5 volt. And now here's the thing, I've seen some of these receivers actually switch the RX and TX pad. Okay, so this one we'll just kind of go through real quick. I don't really want to get into what is a UART. That's a long explanation, but we need to understand that a lot of drawings online will have the RX and TX of where the receiver's going, but they're not showing you that the pads of the receiver are as so. Okay, so this pad on this receiver is ground. So that's obvious. You're just going to attach that to a ground pad on your flight controller. Any ground pad's fine. 5 volt pad. So we need to energize the receiver from a 5 volt pad of the flight controller. Any 5 volt pad will work. The TX, this is the TX on the receiver. That's the transmission pad, okay? So this is the transmitting information away. So keep in mind, this receiver does transmit. This is a full telemetry receiver. So this receiver is going to give your radio all this data and information. And when we're flying FPV, we don't really care as much as if you're flying line of sight. So if you're flying, some other type of model, you might want to have this information come back to your radio. We use it in FPV for LUA script. There's a whole bunch of things. Have your antenna, when you power it, have your antenna on, because it is transmitting. Now remember, we need to transmit from our receiver to our flight controller. The flight controller needs to receive that information. That's why we tie the TX to the RX. I see a lot of people having issues on Facebook. As you know, I'm Scooter Pie on Facebook, and I see a lot of people cross these two wires. They'll bind up to it. It's like, I'm bound and nothing's working. Usually there's two reasons why nothing's working. You have these wires wrong, or you have model match incorrectly set up in your ELRS LUA script. So those are usually the two things that are messing you up. So remember, TX receives the information, okay? So all your controls, all the things that you're doing, that's going to transmit and go into the receiving pad of your flight controller, and that information is going to go through, and then your flight controller is going to send out all the data. So like, it's going to transmit your LiPo voltage, your whatever information you have set up. You can have your radio set up to where it tells you, it can scream the whole time you're flying if you want. So it's kind of a complex thing, but you just need to understand that this is a communication loop, and if you don't have this loop set up correctly, things aren't going to work out for you. So make sure that you understand that. If you have any more questions and comments, let me know. But like I said, I don't want this video to be really long, because understanding UART is a little bit more information. We're going to work actually with the EP1 receiver. With the package that I received, I have a long and a short antenna. These antennas, when you mount these antennas, make sure that they're straight. You don't want them bent or curved or whatever, because this wavelength needs to be straight so that it's a correct 2.4 gigahertz wavelength that it captures. I think it's quarter wave. So here's the receiver, so you can see why I blew this up for you, so we didn't have to look at that little tiny thing. Thing I need to do is just run my ground and 5 volt. I have a 5 volt supply. On my channel, I have a 5 volt, how to make your own 5 volt supply, like dirt cheap. So I'm going to connect that to this. I'm not going to worry about the RX and TX in this video, because I'm not going to install it in a quadcopter. We're only just worried about getting bound up to it and making sure that our ELRS procedure, our steps, are correct. So I'll go ahead and solder that up off screen. Let's go ahead and jump over the computer. All right, so we're here at the download area. This address here, I will try to have that in the description for you, so you can click on that link. So we're just going to look here, a little bit of information. So I use Windows, so I'm going to Windows 11. So this is the configurator setup folder that I want to download. Mac users, Linux users, and then in here, this is the one I am going to choose right here for Windows 11. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to download that to a folder. So let's jump over to the folder. All right, so we're in our folder here. Just to let you know, the download, the ExpressLrs, this is the download. So once it was finished downloading, I just put it into a folder, ELRS Configurator folder. I just put it on my desktop. That's what I called it. And then I put the download in the folder, and then I unpacked it in this folder. And then that's how I get the application. All right, so let's jump back over to the configurator. We have our updated configurator, and we're on the official release section. Don't worry about these other things. The one thing that you need to do, you need to make up your mind now. What version of ELRS are you going to use? You don't want to mismatch in here. You don't want to pick different ones for different things. So you need to understand which one that you're going to use. So like the Happy Model Diamond board won't use anything other than 252, as far as I know. I mean, there's so many things. You can't know it all. Some things don't run certain items or whatever the case may be. So make sure that you understand that you want your radio and your receiver on the same thing. So I see a lot of people have issues because they'll buy a new quadcopter and the receiver in it is updated to 3.2, and their radio is still back on 251 or 252. That's not going to work out. Your radio and your receiver in your quad need to be the same. So your TX and RX need to be on the same version. I would suggest that you do everything on the newest release. I am going to use 3.2.0. Everything I own is on 3.2.0 right now, except for my Diamond board is on 2.5.2 because there's a target mismatch issue. I don't know, the SPI receiver, they have basically abandoned the project or something, so I have to run a separate module for that. Quite annoying. So anyway, I'm going to choose that version. You need to come up and choose the correct one. Of course, this is a newer version available because I'm using an older version because that's what I got everything on. So now we're going to go to our device category. Okay, so imagine this is a file cabinet of vendors, of brands. So you got all these different, I remember when there was only a couple line items in here. So the more line items they got, the more confusing it gets. And it's like, what am I going to do here? So we looked at 2 receivers on the bench. Okay, so we have Happy Model 2.4 gigahertz system, and then there's a 900 gigahertz system. I only run 2.4 gigahertz systems. So that's the file cabinet drawer I want to open. There's also Radio Master. Okay, Radio Master has a 2.4 gigahertz, and eventually you'll see Radio Master have a 900 gigahertz. They have a new receiver system out. So you can choose that one, and then you go into the different pieces in here, like the RP1 2.4. That's your receiver right there. That's the target you would choose. In our case, we're going to go with Happy Model because that's the receiver and the transmitter. The radio external module slim is my Happy Model. So now we have some choices in here. And, it might be confusing when you first look at it, but just understand, this is the Happy Model. This is going to be the receiver in your quadcopter. This is going to be the module in your radio or external to your radio. And then here's an add-on receiver that they just came out with. Okay. So not really confusing. We have an RX, a dual. EP dual is just I have one. It's just a different type of receiver. And then here's the target, the firmware we need for our EP1 or an EP2 2.4 gigahertz receiver. We want to download our transmitter information first. Okay, so you can see here we have the ES24 and the ES24 Pro, which I have. And then also I have the ES24 Slim Pro on my Zorro. So that's what I'm going to choose. You have to download the file. You have to build and download this file, put it in a folder, and then we'll come back here and we'll build another file for the receiver. The cool thing is once you've built these folders on your desktop or whatever, that's the folder you'll use to upload and download all of your receivers and your radio TXs. So it's pretty quick. I'm going to use the Wi-Fi method. I don't use the UART method because in my case the Wi-Fi method is super easy. Standard mode, kind of want things to kind of generally fill in for you. Regulatory, the EU, so the EU category for regulatory, and then the ISM is the rest of the world. So in my case, I'm in the United States. I'm not in the EU, so that's the one I'll choose. Binding phrase, you type in whatever you want. The binding phrase is quite interesting because once you power up your receiver, so you power up your radio and then you power up your quadcopter, they communicate this binding phrase and they automatically bind up for the first time. So there's no button pushing or CLI dump files or anything. You just, they bind right up. It works pretty nice. We're not going to worry about that one. And then we come here and our default Wi-Fi device. So when we're dealing with the Wi-Fi of the receiver, this is the address that our computer needs to look for. So you'll go to your Wi-Fi module on your computer and click on it and disconnect from your home Wi-Fi. And you'll connect to your receiver once it's in Wi-Fi mode. And this is the address to get into that. So that's something to keep in mind at 10.0.0.1, and it will connect to the Wi-Fi module in your receiver so that the configurator can communicate. We need to input our home information so that when we're loading into our receiver, via Wi-Fi, it will, the configurator will go to our home Wi-Fi network and reach out to the cloud. Okay. So if this information is wrong, or you're not on home Wi-Fi when you're doing this, you're at your buddy's house or at some local business or something, you're not going to be able to run your configurator or your update page on the internet. Okay. So that's something to keep in mind, that you want to make sure that this information matches wherever you're at using that Wi-Fi. Telemetry port interval, I'm not worried about that unless your radio's sitting there going telemetry lost, telemetry covered, telemetry lost, telemetry recovered. There's really no purpose in messing with that. I'm not exactly sure the long details about this. So if you are a guru of ELRS and you want to explain this more than what I just did, by all means in comments. The more information, the better. So we're going to upload our home Wi-Fi, the name of your home Wi-Fi, and then your password of your Wi-Fi, which I've already done. And then, so make sure that's right, because otherwise you can't get in there. And then this is the interval. So like when you plug in your quadcopter and your radio is turned off, how long is it going to take for your receiver to communicate via Wi-Fi? So it will go basically from trying to communicate with your radio to trying to communicate with Wi-Fi. I've got it set up to 60 seconds because I may plug in my quadcopter and put it on the line and then forget my radio's not on. I don't want to go sit down and discover that I didn't turn my radio on in time. So the receiver goes into Wi-Fi mode and I can't take off. So you want to make sure that interval makes sense to you. If you don't want it to sit for an entire minute waiting for Wi-Fi to come on, you could change that to 30 seconds or 15 seconds or whatever you want to do. I just have it set to a minute. That gives me time to remember to turn my radio on. So yeah, everything is set up now. Okay. So we have everything that we need kind of set up to get this file built. Before we build that file, I want to just explain here. I know you're probably seeing me pass it earlier and it's like, what was that? So download the Lua script. This is the very first thing that we're going to do before we go down here and build. I don't do Flash. I'm sorry. I just do build. I like to have a folder on the desktop that I can access whenever I want. I've seen a lot of Flash, you just go to Flash it directly and have some issues. So I don't use that. But download Lua script. You want to click on that and download this Lua script file, because that's how your radio is going to communicate with ELRS. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're downloading the correct Lua script file. So we want to make sure that all of this information is up here is correct, so that we have the correct Lua script file. So 320, that's what I want. Happy Model Slim Pro TX. I want to make sure that's the correct Lua script for that TX. So I'm going to go ahead and download that, and I'm going to put it in the file. All right, so we're back in our folder here. We downloaded that Lua script. So I'm going to show you this so you can remember where we're at. So I don't want to lose you here. But this is where we downloaded our configurator. Okay. So in this folder, in my ELRS Happy Model folder, I actually have other folders already created. This is the one that we created. This is probably the only one that you have right now. So you can create another folder that has to do with your Happy Model or your Radio Master or whatever ELRS you're using for your radio. So the internal or external ELRS module, that's what we're dealing with. Create a folder for that. Okay, so you can see here I have Happy Model. This is the TX. So this is the Slim Pro TX. Okay, so you want to make sure that you understand to kind of keep things separated and organized. So here I have my Happy Model ES24TX. This is my 3.20 version and my 2.51 version. Okay, so I'm just going to go in here. Now keep in mind, I downloaded this Lua script like back in March. Okay, so I'm going to continue using this Lua script. But when you save that, put it into your file. So you're not going to have any of these other files yet. The only thing you're going to have is your Lua script file. So now we're going to build the other two. Okay. So I just have some other, ignore everything you see in here except for the Lua script. So now you have your Lua script folder in a place where you know to find it. We're going to put this Lua script information on our SD card. If your radio doesn't already have ELRS version 3, so 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, whatever the case may be, you need to make sure that you put that on your SD card. We can throw out the old one, like if you bought your radio and it has 2.52 on it, we can throw it out and put 3 on there. Okay, so now it's time for us to go ahead and build the TX file. So here I have the Pro Series file, and then here's my receivers. So we're going to go ahead and build that now. So let's go ahead and jump over to the configurator. So now our download, the Lua script is finished. So now we can click build on our folder. If I do that, I'll lose my audio. So bear with me. So if you click on this, it's going to take several, the very first time you do it, depending on how fast your computer and your internet and all that is, it's going to take a second to download. Once that's finished building, it will place on your desktop a folder like you just seen, or 2 files that you just seen, and you just put that in your folder. So go ahead and click build, because we have everything set up that we need for our radio module. So let's go ahead and jump back over to that folder, because I've already done it and it's already there ready for us. All right, so we're going to have these 2 files placed on our desktop. We're just going to grab those files and put it into our folder with our Lua script so we can kind of keep everything together and know what we're doing. So this is going to be the module in your radio, or attached to the back of your radio. This is the one we're going to use. They're both pretty much identical, but we're going to use this one. So I have my Happy Model TX Pro. That's the Slim Pro that I have in the back. This is the firmware for that. All right, so let's go ahead and grab our radio, and we're going to pull the SD card out, and we're going to drop this folder into our SD card to make sure that we have correct Lua script so that we can communicate with ELRS Cloud to upload this file to our module. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump back over the bench. And we have our radio here. Let me go ahead and slide this out of the way. I think we got a good understanding of all that. We don't need that anymore. So in the Zorro, we have an SD card right up here in the front. Okay, so we're just going to pop our little tab there and pull this SD card out. You know, I don't have much fingernails here. All right, so we have our SD card, and we're going to pop this in the computer. I think this is the easiest way to do it. I mean, you could put a USB-C connector here to your computer, and then on your screen you power this up, and then when you plug it into your computer, it'll ask you for joystick, you know, like you're going to sim or whatever, or it'll ask you mass storage, and you can do it that way. I just find it quick and easy to do it this way. So let's jump back over to the computer. So we're over here at the folders. So this is the folder from our SD card. So we have our SD card plugged in. And then these are the things that are on our SD card. We're going to go into scripts, and then we're going to go into tools. And in the scripts and tools is all of our different Lua script information. Okay. And you can see right here that I downloaded this updated version back in March. Okay. So ELRS V2 or V3, that's the same folder. Okay, so if you have V2, see that's a lot of problems that people have, is that they'll have the Lua script of V2, but their firmware is 3. So see what I'm saying? The step that you have to have everything match up. You can't hodgepodge a bunch of different ELRS stuff together. So let's say this is V2, so we just simply delete this folder off of our SD card and then drag and drop this folder in its place, and that way we know we have the correct ELRS Lua script information. So we're done with our SD card. We can go ahead and put that back into the radio. Alright, so back over the bench here, we're going to go ahead and put our SD card back in. Whenever you put SD cards back in Radio Master devices, you want to make sure that you're putting it into the case, okay? Because there's some of these radios, the USB is not lined up very well, and the SD card falls down into the body of the radio. Very frustrating. Kind of a quality control gap there, but you know, it is what it is. So now, when we go to our radio, we haven't had to set up anything or do anything to our radio.
Welcome to EdgeTX.
We want to make sure that our radio is ready to receive our ELRS. So we go into the systems, and we're going to page over to our radio firmware. Okay, so version. So EdgeTX. You see here that I'm running EdgeTX. Any EdgeTX is going to run ELRS, but if you're running OpenTX, I think it's 2. If I remember right, it's 2.3. OpenTX 2.3 or 2.8 or older. ELRS doesn't work out with OpenTX older versions. So make sure that your radio information, so the main board in your radio, keep in mind, that's another thing people don't understand. The module in your radio is separate from the main board of your radio. I know that makes it kind of confusing, but this radio can have different modules, different communication protocols, but the same main board, the same information for your models. So in this case, we're using EdgeTX. So we create all of our models in EdgeTX. But EdgeTX has nothing to do with ELRS as far as your models are concerned. You're telling your radio that you're using ELRS to communicate with your model. But your interface between you and your radio is EdgeTX. That's why we use LUA script. LUA script is a communication between our radio and our protocol of communication to the model, the receiver and TX. In this case, I'm using this one. So we need to communicate with this module, whether it's inside the radio or on the outside of the radio. It's separate. So EdgeTX needs to communicate with the Happy Model TX. That's what LUA script's for. So make sure that your EdgeTX is up to date. If you go to ELRS's website, it tells you right away what version. And I apologize, I don't have that handy. So in here, we're going to go to our ELRS LUA script. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that real quick. Go to Systems and then scroll to find that file. You just put that file, ExpressLRS. You just put that file in there. So go ahead and initiate that. Now here's all our information. This is all of our everything that's in here. Our EdgeTX of our radio through LUA script is now communicating with this module, and we get to see it. Okay? You don't get to see this if you don't have a model already made up. Okay? So sometimes you'll go in here, let's say I just choose create a model. I haven't turned on ELRS. Okay? So I just have a general model put on here. So now if I return out and I go to my ELRS LUA script, it's just going to sit there and load. A lot of people have complained, like, I just got a white screen. It doesn't do anything. Well, it's not going to communicate. That module's not going to communicate with EdgeTX because EdgeTX doesn't have a model to reference that this is what we're supposed to use. I'm trying not to make that sound very confusing, but it's a little confusing if you don't understand. So let's go ahead and return back out of here. Now you got to hold it down. And then we're going to simply go into our model we're going to create. You can name that whatever you want. So let's go ahead and go into the model. So model name, like I said, you can name that whatever you want. But here's what's important. If you scroll back that way, okay? And then you see here you have internal and external modules. So internal module and external module. In my case, I have external. You may have internal ELRS in your Radio Master. This Radio Master that I purchased has a 4-in-1 in it. I've got Hubsan quadcopters from 2012 I want to fly. So I can go into the internal 4-in-1 module and fly all kinds of stuff from Amazon, old hubs, and everything. You may have an ELRS internal module, so you want to turn that on. In my case, I'm going to turn on my external module. Obviously, it's this one, right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. And I'm going to use the Crossfire. See, multi is what's on internal, and Crossfire is what I'm going to use, because that ELRS uses the Crossfire protocol. Now you're going to choose your baud rate. If you're using the Radio Master product, you're good to go. If you're trying to use a QX7 or a older FR Sky or some other type of radio, you got to be careful with that baud rate. The QX7 FR Sky QX7 radio has a chip you have to install. You have to add on to it to run that baud rate. So make sure you understand what that means. Read up on it. I don't want to go through it all in this video. But if you're Radio Master, then you know that 400K is correct. And I chose to go with 500 hertz. Okay, so I want to go with 500 packet rate. So 500 packets of information per second going between the receiver and the TX. Because if you're running fast and close up, 500 is great. ELRS Dev had said that 250 is a great medium for everything. If you're really pushing the range, you want to lower that down even more than 250. It's really interesting. If you go on ELRS's website, they actually have a range competition where people have submitted how far they've gone out. It's pretty neat. But anyway, I'm going to have to investigate what the 2 errors are for. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but we're going to choose 500 packet rate. And then here is our receiver. So there's something I mentioned earlier, model match. You want to get stick movements in beta flight, and you can't. Well, there's a model match. So I'm going to name my receiver. So I'm just going to name my receiver number 9. I'm trying to hold this screen without aggravating you too much. So receiver 9. That receiver is now number 9. Simple enough. I run model match on. I always have model match on because I don't want to accidentally have one of my quads plugged in and then grab another quad, run out in the line, and then go and arm it and full throttle off the line when the other one's plugged in. I don't want both quadcopters going off at the same time. It's a safety thing. That's what I use. I'm sure there's some more information that you want to add to that. It aggravates me when people come in and give advice and it's just like real easy, like, oh, shut that off or don't use that, or, you know, there's got to be some understanding of why you're turning things on and off. I mean, this is your hobby, not mine. You got to understand what you're doing, especially if you're running, you know, you're flying dudes like this around, you know, you're going to hurt somebody. You need to know what you're doing. So anyway, so that's all we have set up here. So now that we've turned this on, you can hear the fan turn on, the light is on. Kind of see that. Without that on, there's no module to communicate. Okay? So now the fan just went off, the light just went off. There's no communication going on with your module. So therefore your ELRS is not, your LUA script's not going to work. Okay? So everything here is set up the way I want it. There's really nothing else for me to do in this screen. So we're going to go ahead and return out all the way. Like I said, model 11, it's whatever you want it to be. You name it at the top. If you need to know how to set up a model, I have a video, Get in the Air, and it goes through everything you need to know of setting up a model and beta flight, and I mean everything, even what we're going through right now. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and go to Systems, and we'll go back to our LUA script, and I'm going to show you that model match real quick. I apologize about this. This setup I'm using right now is potentially a live stream capabilities, so I could kind of communicate live and do some tech work one-on-one with people. So bear with me, I'm still figuring out the bugs, and on a shoestring budget you wouldn't believe. So anyway, so I have my packet rate at 500, and then I have my telemetry ratio set up. Really nothing for you to do here. Model match on. If you don't have stick movements in beta flight, you might want to come in and check to make sure this is correct. Sometimes you might have to come in here and reinitiate it. Okay? You see how that spooled across there? TX power, 100 milliwatts. I've never really needed anything more. This is a cool feature. This is a VTX admin. So you can change your VTX channel and band and everything, power rating, right here at the radio. So when you plug your quadcopter in, it automatically changes for you, so you don't have to go in to the stick movements, go into the OSD, and do all this stuff to change it. It's pretty easy to set up too. I'm not going to go through it in this video. Wi-Fi connectivity, that's what we're after, but I just want to show you kind of the end of here. Okay, so Wi-Fi connectivity. We're going to click on our Wi-Fi connectivity, and we're going to enable Wi-Fi. What that's going to do is it's going to enable the Wi-Fi from our module to broadcast a Wi-Fi address, and we're going to go to our computer and find that. So let me go ahead and connect to Wi-Fi, and we'll set this down. Now here's the one thing about the Happy Model Slim that's quite aggravating. These two, the airflow in and out is suffocated. If you set it on a flat surface, it either stops the flow going in or the flow going out. So I set my radio up on an angle so that it doesn't burn up. Let's go ahead and jump over the computer. All right, to get to this page, we need to go down here in the corner, okay? And, well, on my computer, my internet is down here. We need to disconnect our Wi-Fi from our home network. And we're going to connect to our radio. So the Happy Model Slim Pro on the back of our radio is broadcasting its own Wi-Fi address. So we disconnect from our home address and connect to our Happy Model Slim Pro, or whatever module you're running. So once you connect to that, this screen's going to come up, and you're going to come over here to update. This is where you're going to go find. You're going to choose the file. Remember in our folders, the file that we had? And here in this folder, we're going to grab this file right here. This is the one we're after. Okay? So once we find that file, we're going to click update, and that's going to load the Happy Model TX Pro series. This is what you have now. So this is the information you have, and you're going to update that. So click on update and go ahead and update your module, and then it'll say successful, done. And then you need to remember to disconnect the Wi-Fi from your Happy Model Slim Pro or whatever module you're using and reconnect to your home network. Okay, so we're done in here. We've updated that. It will go back to your screen here, and we know that we have that in there. We can go into the system file and check it. So right now, after that process, we have our ELRS correct, and then we have the correct updated version 3.20 in my case on our module. So now this module is ready to speak to any V3 firmware, any receiver with V3 point whatever. This module will now speak to it. If your receiver is running V2.52 or 251, this module is no longer going to speak to that. So that's the caveat as far as I'm concerned at ELRS. So now we are finished with our radio. We can go ahead and turn our radio off. So everything is done in our radio. Now it's time to do the receiver. So I'm going to throw some wires on this real quick on the ground in 5 volt. I'm not worried about TX. I have my antenna on it. So let me go ahead and solder up some wires real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, so we got the radio out of the way. So we're dealing with our receiver now. So before we do anything else, we need to go back to ELRS Configurator and get the firmware folder for the receiver. So let's go ahead and jump over to the configurator and grab that information. All right, we're back over here to the configurator. Oh no, what's going on? We got all kinds of problems. The configurator isn't working right, or you have error messages and stuff because you didn't hook up your home Wi-Fi network. You're still on the TX Wi-Fi network. So make sure you turn on your Wi-Fi network. All right, so we're back up here, refresh our screen, and then everything that we did in here should be the same. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to our Happy Model 2.4 system. We're going to go to our receiver, which is the EP1 right here. Okay, we're going to do the Wi-Fi, and now see it remembers me, so we have all of our information. Everything is still the same as it was. Okay, the only thing we had to change is this, and then decide that we're going to do Wi-Fi. Okay, so everything is set up for our receiver. This might, confuse some, but we just know that it's going to be one of these RXs. Now, here's the thing. If you go in here and you're not on a list, you don't see your product on a list, I hate to say it, but if a manufacturer or brand isn't working with ExpressLRS devs to have information for them in here, then I personally wouldn't own it. I mean, that's my opinion. So each is to his own, but I'm not going to go into generic download firmware on non-branded stuff in this video. So we know we have the Happy Model EP1 2.4 system, so that's what we're using. Wi-Fi is on. So now we can go down and we can build this file. I don't like direct flashing, as I said earlier. So we're going to go ahead and build this file and then put it in our folder. So let's jump over to our folder, because I mean, first time it's going to take several minutes depending on your Wi-Fi network, because this is working off of cloud. So let's go ahead and jump over to the folder. And again, in my folder, I have these different folders, but you have the configurator, and then you should have now the TX with maybe a different version. So your TX folder is there. You won't have this, or you won't have receivers. Okay, so I have an EP1 3.2 already. So the file, I've already downloaded these files, okay? But this is what you're going to see on your desktop. When you're done with the build in the configurator, you'll see these two files. So just grab them and put them into a folder like I did. And then Happy Model EP1 2400 RX, and the version is what we're going to be looking for. So the next step is to go ahead and power up our receiver and get it into Wi-Fi mode. Okay, and then we're going to come back to the computer and we're going to disconnect our home Wi-Fi network, and we're going to search for our receiver just like we did with the TX. And this is the file that we're going to grab. So let's go ahead and jump back over to the bench. We're back over here to the bench. I need to power up my receiver. In your case, this might be into a quadcopter. So I have my trusty 5-volt supply. Okay, so I went to a thrift store. I mean, you can find these cheap. 5-volt output, and this one's 2 amps. You want to be around 2 amps. You want to make sure that you're above on your flight controller, the 5-volt rail. A lot of them are 2 amps now. I remember a lot of back when it was like 1 amp, and then they were like, oh, 1.5 amp. Well, now they're in 2 and 2.5 amps. So it's nice to have a power supply that's 5 volts, so you can power up all these peripherals, your VTX, your receiver, your all these things. So anyway, I just put alligator clips on it. So kind of cool, but I got a video on my channel of how to make one. So go ahead and make sure that we got our polarity correct. Hot goes with hot, ground goes with ground. And let's go ahead and power it up. So initial light, you see that kind of a slow strobe? That right now this receiver is looking for our TX. obviously our radio is turned off and our external module is off, and this can't find our external module to speak to it. So what happens with it is after the 60 seconds or whatever the factory put it at, I hope they, messing with us and set it to like 5 minutes. We're going to be sitting here a while. But whatever that setting is initially from Happy Model, we'll sit here and wait for this to Wi-Fi activate. So I didn't want to speed through this in case, that first initial one, I like it to be the same for you. So I wanted to kind of hang tight. So it's still searching. It's kind of a slow, there we go. See that right there? Really fast. So now we're in Wi-Fi mode. So this can get hot. So you might want to have a fan on your quad or whatever to make sure that this receiver don't get too hot. So let's jump over to the computer and we'll grab our Wi-Fi. All right, so we do our little network thing again and we connect to our receiver. So we're all connected up and this window pops up, and then we can come down here and we can choose our file. So let's go back to our folder and choose that file. All right, so we chose the Happy Model RX and then our version that we're using, and then we can go ahead and update that. All right, update successful, hit OK. Let's go ahead and jump back over to the bench, but don't forget to reconnect to your home Wi-Fi network. That's so aggravating when you forget that. All right, let's jump back over the bench here. All right, so it just goes back into looking for our radio. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the power. Actually, I don't need to. I actually have a switch over here. And we'll go ahead and turn on our radio.
Welcome to EdgeTX.
Okay. And now we're set up here. Now remember, we used the binding for you. Let me see if I can turn that up. See, I could see that. You see that screen now? So let me go ahead and power this up now. So everything should be connecting. Okay. I don't know if they'll connect if it's that close. If you have these two things too close together, they might overpower each other and they won't communicate. So go in here and go into Lua script. And we are going to TX power. I don't want that. 100 milliwatt. All right, so now we have a model match. So you can see here it says model. See that flashing? I want to show you this. See how it says model match error? Because I use model match. So now we're going to have to refresh that. So just click on it and then click on it. Okay. So now that message goes away. So now that's all bound up. Once we did that,
Telemetry lost.
got it.
Telemetry recovered.
My little alligator clips aren't tight enough. But do you see that this is solid green now? There's no more blinking. This is solid green. So we're bound up. So if I turn my receiver off.
Telemetry lost.
Okay, then we turn our receiver back on. See that initial blink? See, that's how fast it bound up. So we're good to go with that. That's it. ELRS is done. Like I said, if you have questions of how to, let me get out of there. Let me go in here to one of my models. Okay.
Receiver still connected.
Yeah, it's still connected because I need to power that off. All right.
Telemetry lost.
Yeah. All right, so page over. You can see ELRS whoop. Page over. I don't do anything with helis. Flight mode, don't need anything. But you see all these inputs? This is just for a whoop. Okay? I got all this stuff set up for a whoop. I show in my Get in the Air video how to do all of this. The mixers, how to set up the outputs so you have 1000, 2000. Like there's a whole bunch of information in there. And then how to, so like when I push this button, it'll actually tell me the voltage on my quadcopter. So if I'm flying line of sight or something, I can tell what the voltage is on my quadcopter. The LiPo, you know. And then telemetry, how do you get all this information, what to do with it, things of that nature. And then also, I don't know if I put a telemetry. So if I'm flying a line of sight, I can see my battery voltage, the link quality I have with it and everything. And then of course the battery in I power my radio up with a large LiPo, because I actually power my radio and my goggles with a large LiPo. That way I don't have a bunch of batteries to mess with. Okay. We're done. ELRS is finished. Now, here's the thing. That's quite a process, right? There's quite a few steps that you have to go through. And if you don't follow those steps correctly, it's quite a conundrum. But imagine if you've done it once or you've done it twice, how fast you can just pull up the configurator, run your build folder, or if you already have the folder, think how fast it is that you can just Wi-Fi right in and update it, and you're done. Off you go. You can do 5 quads in 5 minutes. Really, it's fast. So anyway, I tried my best not to ramble on and got through this, and it is 3 something in the morning. I'm going to bed. I hope this helped you out, and if it did, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you hated it, man, you give it a thumbs down. It all works. Enjoy the breeze.